everyone. So in this lecture, we'll be learning Cypress configurations. We already covered a little bit, but in this lecture, we are going to deep dive about these configurations. And we will be learning environment variables and CLI. So let's see what I mean by this. So we are getting deep dive inside the cypress.config.js, which we a little bit seen before. And we are going to understand what is this environment variables, how we can use that. We will be learning test characterized logic, which is some of the advanced and one of the most crucial thing in most modern automation frameworks. And we will be learning CLI. What we mean by the CLI, command line interface. So let's start with the Cypress configurations. So when we launch the Cypress for the first time, as you can remember, we will be guided through the this Cypress configuration file for you, right? It's gonna create for us. So this file is basically, it's called cypress.config.js, as we can see from our framework, which is this one, right? So we touched this file before, we changed some configuration, we changed our viewport and etc. So this file is used to store any configuration specific Cypress, and it consists of some options in key value pairs that are applicable to test within the framework. So this define config is a helper function. It's exported by the Cypress, and this function is basically provides automatic code completion for configuration. So what I mean by that, so for example, when I just remove this one, or let's say, for example, let's see if this options, these are comes and it's provided by this import in here. So as I say, it provides automatically code completion for configuration in many popular editors. So while it's not strictly necessary to have this configuration, so it's recommended because there are really so much options that you can do, and this define config is going to definitely be helpful for you. So the default behavior of Cypress can be modified by supplying any of the following configuration options. So let's see the list of available options we have. So actually, we will remember that, but let's just open our test runner, npx cypress open. So right now, as you can see, we don't see any configuration, right? Because there are some default configuration that's set by the Cypress, and we don't see unless we overwrite them. So what I mean by that, so let's go to our test runner and open this end-to-end testing. And from here, you can just click on settings, and from the settings, if you just click on the project settings and go below, you will see cypress.config.js. So these all the options that you don't see inside the cypress.config.js file is actually set here by default. You just don't see them unless you change any value. So anything that you can see in here, you can overwrite them. I mean, if you guys remember that while we were talking about the assets folder, right? Like download, screenshot, and videos, what I told you is basically we can also set these folders in different places, right? For example, screenshot folder, as you can see in here. By default, Cypress is creating the screenshots folder inside inside the Cypress folder. Also, it's same for as well as for the videos. For fixtures, like fixtures also is set to have inside our Cypress folder as well, which is in here. And let's see, for example, downloads. You see, it's also by default set in here. If you want, you can just Cypress is giving you an option, this flexibility option to change this the folder spaces. It's all up to you, but basically you can just override all the options that we have. For example, let's see this Chrome Web Security that we set, right? I will try to find that. For example, these are the ones that you see in blue. It means that like you did change these options. Like this is normally when it's like set to default values, you will see like these are with the gray like background, but the ones that you change explicitly, you overwrite the options, you will see them with the blue. So we know that we also changed the viewport, right, for height and width. And as you can see, instead of the gray background, they are defined with the blue background. And as well as it's same for the Chrome Web Security too. So you can see, right, the gray ones are default. Cypress already guiding you through about what those means. This blue background config, it means that set from cypress.config.js, which we did. And with the ones that is with the yellow is the environment files and CLIs and etc. Cypress is pretty much straightforward about it, to explaining this to us, to understanding the framework, and Cypress has one of the best documentation of this automation tool that you can find. To be honest, like from Cypress, you can just find anything you need easily. So let's just go here. For example, like going into Cypress documentation, let's you just have it in here. So in the documentation, you can just find any configuration. For example, if we say like configuration, so by going inside this configuration, Cypress is already going to explain you this each option in the configuration that we have inside this, like our test runner. It explains to you everything in details, and they are really useful. They have like so much different configurations that you can flexibly change in your test automation framework. You see, it's explained the Chrome Web Security, whether to enable Chrome-based browser web security for same origin policy and insecure mixed content. Like we have all the explanations in here for you, so you don't need to worry about that. And also, as we mentioned in the beginning of our class, Cypress has a huge community. So anytime that if this like explanations in the Cypress documentation is not enough for you, by googling it you can get so much information. But as you can see, Cypress is already providing us a lot. So how we can override these options? So there are two ways of overriding these options. So overriding these options, first by overriding these options, these default options from the cypress.config.js. So basically Cypress is giving us the option to dynamically alter configuration options, and there will be instances where we might want to change these defaults to better suit for our specific testing needs or environment, which we did already, right? We had a problem with the Chrome Web Security and we changed this option and we override it. Well, this is where the ability to override these options becomes invaluable. So overriding individual options is basically when running Cypress from the command line, we can actually pass these options, a config flag, override individual config options. Well, this is basically helping us when we run the Cypress in multiple environments and on multiple developer machines. So this is important especially for the cloud, right? For Jenkins, for maybe like GitHub Actions, because we provide in those like CI/CD tools, we are providing the commands because they don't understand what is a test runner. So they need these commands. By the way, while we are discussing it, we will be also learning these command lines too. Right now, for example, if I give you the basic example from this one, so as you can see, from here we have an option. So let's just try to implement this option, for example. So right now my viewport height is set to 180 and my viewport width is set to like 1920, right? So the thing is I can override it, this option also from the command line, because this is not always valid. I mean, maybe like I need to change my viewport. So if you're gonna run your test from the command line, first you need to understand something. What you need to understand is basically you have to run your tests from the command line. So you have to kill your test runner. Because as I say, it's really important because on the company you are never going to use the test runner. Maybe you will only going to use the test runner for debugging purposes or like while preparing your framework. But while you are running your framework on the cloud, like Jenkins, Spinnaker, maybe like Circle CI and etc., these kind of tools, you are never going to use this test runner because they don't know what is test runner, right? They cannot just run Cypress like npx Cypress open and click on that one, etc. They understand the command line. So understanding this CLI is really important. So let's say I'm gonna override this option. So by default, my option is 190, like 180p and 1920p, right? And let's say I want to change this one. I want to make it like, for example, like 1280p to 720p. So how can I do that? So what I'm going to do is basically I will go to command line. I will say npx cypress run. So this command, we better understand that this command is a default command to run any Cypress test. So if you're going to run your Cypress test in any of your tests with any of your configuration, it's 100% that you are going to initialize your command with this command, okay, which is npx cypress run. And let's say what I want to do is I want to override this config, right? All you need to do is you will pass double dash, you will say config. Then after, what configuration that you want to override inside your cypress.config.js. And the option I want to override is this viewport, right? All I need to do is just get this viewport. But we are not going to use with the colon, we will call it with the equal sign. And I will say for this one, like 720. And after, after this one, you have to put comma. Then after comma, you will just say viewport width. And for this one, let's say I want 1280. So right now we will not see that how the browser looks like. Actually, let me just run the test and let me show you. I will get into this one more, but when I run my test with this command, let's see what will happen. Okay, it didn't understand the command. Let's see what is the issue. Oh, like yeah, we should not have comma in here, I guess. Right, let's see. Yep, it's running all our tests right now. By the way, do you mention that it's at the same time also credit this folder too, which is the assets folder, right? By the way, I know the reason that all the tests fail right now, because as you can remember, we overwrite this visit function, right? That's why it's failing right now, because since we updated these ones, right, we didn't update the other ones. Those are still using this like front end. That's why it's failing. We will fix this. So I'm just gonna kill my test right now with pressing Ctrl C, and I'm just gonna command out this command that we created, and I will just put this front end back to this one. Let's do for this one too, and this one too. I'll run the command again. By the way, if you mentioned that we don't see any browser at all, as you can see, tests are passing right now. But if you, as I say, if you mention that you don't see any browser right now, so this is called headless testing. We never seen this before, but in general, the tests are by default tend to run in the especially for the most modern browsers, they tend to run in headless mode. So what I mean by the headless mode is basically you don't see the browser, so the tests runs without using the browsers by internally in the Node.js. So you don't see anything. And the advantage of this testing is basically it's much more faster, because you don't wait for like those stuff for your browser to page to be loaded and etc. Like, you know, everything is just done by the APIs and it goes so fast, and that's why especially headless test is the preferred way on the automation framework. But let's say you want to see your browser, right? So what we can do for this? So if you want to see your browser, I'm going to kill my test right now. What I'm going to do is basically I will just say double dash again, and I will say had it. When you provide this command is basically telling your automation framework that I want to see the browser. Don't run the headless, run in headed mode. So let's see how it's gonna look like. Now, as you can see, we can see the browser. By the way, especially this headless mode is really flaky in all automation frameworks, like especially like Selenium, because any tests are so easy to fail. For example, if you want to validate if something is visible, since it won't open the browser, it's not even validating if it's visible or not. It's always failing. But in Cypress, this is pretty much straightforward and easy, and also like most of the automation, like modern automation frameworks too. By the way, the problem is in here. Also, it's at the same time, since we did not comment out this the default files, right? The scaffold examples. That's why it's also running them all too. But that's fine. So I'm just going to kill the execution. So what I'm going to do is basically I will just do something. So you know what we can do actually? If you want to exclude this, right? If you want to exclude this test to run, so what we can do? Let's go to this npx cypress open, and let's actually overwrite our execution point of our tests. We can exclude these files. We can only say that I only want to run this test inside the integration folder. So if you go to settings and project settings, there will be a location that where do we run our folders, right? This is the spec pattern. So if I take this one and from the configuration overwrite this option, let's see. Yeah, we are getting an error in here. So Cypress is basically telling us that you are using it end to end, right? This is the what type of testing we pattern, right? That's what type of testing pattern we pick. We said we want to do end to end testing. So it's telling us, hey, like provide your spec pattern inside to end to end. If you use component, provide inside the component. So right now we are out of end to end, right? So that's why we have to take this one and we have to put this one not inside the setup node events. This is something different. We will touch base in here later. But you should provide inside to end to end. But there's a problem in here, right? Let me just say this one. I will say try again, and the problem is fixed. As I say, the spec pattern option is the pattern that we are telling our framework which tests we want to run. But if you see in here, we are telling us that inside to end folder, run all the tests, right? But do we want to run all the tests inside to end? No. We want to exclude these ones. So all you need to say is just replace this star star with integration and save it. Now if you go specs, you see from now on we only see test files inside the integration. We don't see the getting started or advanced examples anymore. So I'm gonna kill the test runner right now, and I will run the same command as I ran before, which is in the headed version, right? So our tests are gonna take much more less time. As you can see, since we provided this dash dash headed option, all of our tests are running in the had on the browser mode. We have one test case failure. Let's see which one is that. It's on the advanced topics. Yeah, we knew this one was failing, right? We knew that. That's quite fine. Alright. So by the way, if you see that, at the same time, what we are doing, like we are also learning the CLI commands too. And as you can see, like Cypress CLI, like the output while running the tests are pretty much straightforward and pretty detailed and understandable, as you can see. And what I told you is, like we were talking about the assets folder, the screenshots folder implicitly created, right? Because looks like we have an option in the configuration that we want to take a screenshot when there's a test failure. So if you click on that, you see we see the failure in here. I think another reason that, yeah, because our downloads is empty. Because anytime you rerun your framework, it cleans the files inside this folder. That's why if you want to pass this test also, all we need to do is just make sure that we are downloading something. So I can just again take this command back, take this test back actually, and let's rerun and let's see everything is gonna be a success, and you will see it's going to remove this. Oh, by the way, if you see that, it's also giving us a great folder structure. You see it's creating a folder with the name of the test, which is storing that screenshot inside of that. This is a type of reporting, by the way. And on the old-fashioned frameworks, these options are really hard to configure. But with Cypress, with just one option, you can just activate or deactivate this, which is a pretty great feature. So I will run the same test again. Now everything is working as it's expected. We don't have any failure. Yep, everything is passed. And now you will see it's already cleared the screenshots folder for us, because in this test we didn't get any failure. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. So as you can see, there are many different the default commands. Of course, I cannot get into these commands in one lecture to cover them, but you only use them when you need. So if you need them, you can just go ahead and check the Cypress configuration and to deal with that. And with this overriding options, we also learned that how we can override the options that you have inside the cypress.config.js by the command line. So test retries. So what is this test retries? So end-to-end tests excel at testing complex systems. So however, there are still behaviors that are hard to verify and make tests flaky. Well, this is something that you might come across really often. Sometimes because of the web application or because of the maybe like structure and the architecture of the web application, your tests can give some flaky results. There could be many reasons of that, like your internet connection, maybe since the application is in development process, the application is not stable, maybe it's how it's developed, like it depends on its architecture and etc. So there might be like many reasons. So it means that your tests can be unreliable and it can fail sometimes due to these unpredictable conditions. When as I mentioned in here, right, temporary outages in external dependencies, random network errors, and etc. It can be anything. So some other common race conditions that could result in unreliable tests are like animations, which is 100%, because animations are making our test flaky, because the information always in the animations are dynamic. API calls, you will see flaky tests a lot in the API calls. Yep, test servers and the database availability, resource dependencies availability, and network issues. So within test retries, Cypress can retrieve failed tests to help reduce test flakiness and continuous integration CI build failures. By doing so, this will save your team valuable time and resources so you can focus on what matters most to you. This is really good and really easy to understand in Cypress. But basically, what it means that you can give an option and you can tell your automation framework, hey, like if you fail one test, do not just count it as failed. Just try one more time or try like two more time or three more time. This is very easy. So if you remember that while this was commanded out, this test was failing, right? So let's also demonstrate this. So I will go to cypress.config.js and all I need to do is retries and I will just say 2. So what I mean here is basically if test fails, retry it 2 more times. Then give me the failure. In general, companies are set this one to 1 or 2. They don't do it like 3 times. Because if this test is still failing after 3 times, it's most probably there is a bug or there's a problem with your automation script. So now with this 2 retries, I'm going to run this command that we have. So you will see it's going to run this advanced topics test twice for us. It will of course fail all of them, but still you will see that it will try it 1 more and 2 more again. Yep, we get our first failure. Did you see, by the way? It tried already. We will see it. So you will see there's this advanced topics. Test 1, failure 1. And if you go to this advanced topics failure, you will see this is the one test, it fails once, and we get 3 screenshots. Why? Because after first failure, it tried 2 more times. Actually, we can see it directly from test runner better if I do it from there. So I will just do npx cypress open. And I will go inside this advanced topics and I will run this one. Now you will see something. You see? It tried 3 times. So the first attempt, it will just divide them by the attempts. The first attempt, second attempt, and third attempt. So the first attempt is the original attempt, and the second and third attempt is the amount of retries that we gave on the options. So as I say, this is really strong option that is implemented in the Cypress, and some of the most modern frameworks are also implementing this approach too. And for some legacy automation tools, like when I say legacy, you can just think about like Selenium or maybe like other old tools. They are using some kind of really so much confusing options to handle that. But Cypress is pretty much so easy to handle these configurations. So since we learned this one, I'm just going to leave this one with 1, and that's it. And now you will see one attempt, which is the original attempt, and the second attempt. So I also in details the mention on this one in here how this retry works. By default, test will not retry when they fail because by default this is set to 0. So we will need to enable test retries in our configuration to use this feature. So once test retries are enabled, test can be configured to have X number of times that we defined to retry attempts. So for example, if test retries has been configured with 2 retry attempts, just we did before, Cypress will retry tests up to 2 additional times. So it will be for a total of 3 attempts before potentially being marked as failed. So when each test run again, the following hooks will be rerun also. We will see these hooks, by the way. But however, failures in the before and after hooks will not trigger a retry. As I say, in the hooks we are going to go and try to understand this how hooks works. So Cypress environment variables. So Cypress environment variables are dynamic values that can be used to configure and modify the behavior of your Cypress tests. They allow you to store values that might change between different environments, users, or any other dynamic data. So what is this giving us? This is giving us a flexibility. So it's giving us to allow us to run our tests in different environments. So without changing the test code itself. For example, we want mine to let's say like have a development, staging, and production environments. So each with different URLs or API keys, we can just run this from the command line or from the options. Also security. These can be used to store sensitive data like API keys and passwords and also the common main code base. So to ensure these values are not accidentally committed and the version control, because you can just put these inside the git ignore and then provide this from your documentation like Confluence for example. And dynamic configuration, this is what I mean by the CLI. So they can be used to adjust behavior without modifying the code, which is really helpful in continuous integration. So how we can use this Cypress.environment? So Cypress.environment, this is a method. So basically, this method is helping us that to set environment variables. So environment variables in Cypress are used to store dynamic configuration values, which can be useful for differentiating behavior between states of development, handling sensitive data, or even just for dynamic test configurations. So any key value you set in your Cypress configuration under the environment key will become an environment variable, and this Cypress.environment method will recognize the values of it by key and will use the assigned value in your test. So to for example in the development frameworks you can see like the folders with extension like environment, and they provide this information in the environment. And Cypress is telling you, hey, like you don't need to do that. By using my Cypress.config.js option, you can directly create your environments in here, and from here you can just use them. So what I mean by that, you know what? Let's just demonstrate this how we can use this option. So what we are going to do is basically we need to create the environment object in the cypress.config.js. So all I'm going to do is I will go and I'm going to create environment, and from this object I will provide key value pairs. So let's say we will use the, let's say, login URL, and let's say it's front end, or maybe, oh, you know what, actually we don't need to say front end, we can just get this one directly from the front end because we use this a lot, right? I'm gonna get this portion. So let's say, okay, so I'm going to use this one, or what else I can do, I'm just thinking about it, but that's fine. Okay, so to be able to use that, yeah, this is right now what caused our test to fail, that's fine. So from now on I can just get my URL from here with the help of this cypress.environment method. So all I need to do is, since this advanced topics was open, I guess this was open, but that's alright. We can just change this custom commands to, or let's just use this one. So I can just pass this here directly, cypress.environment. So all I need to do is provide my key in here, and in our case our key is login URL, right? So this login URL was only this tech global training, like, so we don't have a front end in here. So that's why you have to provide this in here. So what you can do is, all you need to do, just go here. It was in here, right? Yeah. I will just say after, by the way, I will just provide this inside the string interpolation, and I will say front end. And now I'm getting my logic URL from the environment, and it's gonna pass front end to end. And let's see how it works. Of course, since we run this one, it's failing. Let's just do this one and fix it how it used to be, and use this one in here too. Yep, as you can see, it's going to front end without needing and everything. You see, we don't even provide this techglobaltrading.com anymore. It's coming directly from the front end. So this is really a good implementation from the Cypress that can be really useful. So you can use many different values, like you can use URL, uh, you can use, like, for example, some paths of your application or some API keys with which we will cover in the future. But this is really a useful option in Cypress. Alright, so let's see what we have left. Oh, by the way, we can override this environment variable too by the command line. I'm not going to demonstrate this one because we don't have a staging. Actually, we have this. We can use that one, right? We have this version actually. We can use this one, definitely. Yeah. We can use this one, but I will come back to this one later. But let's just keep it in mind that we can get this site URL and we can override this option that we provide inside our cypress.config.js from the command line too. So it doesn't need to be always this one. Let's say you want to run your tests in the staging environment. As you can see, you can just override this option from the command line. So CLI. Actually, what we covered so far, that we run our tests from the command line, we have seen it actually. So this time we will going to see it a little bit in more details than what we have in here. So this is what we have is just an example in here. So this time we will try to understand this CLI commands more. So we are going to explore how to initiate tests using the Cypress command line. So actually the Cypress command line interface, which is it's called CLI. You will always hear this as CLI. So the command line capability is a foundational elements in robust automation frameworks. So the primary advantage of using CLI lies in its flexibility, just like overriding our default options, right? It allows testers to customize their test runs based on specific needs. So just like in here, right? For example, maybe in general, I'm running my test in dev environment, but this time maybe for one time I want to run the staging. So this is pretty much flexibility. So this can range from grouping tests can selecting the browser type to overriding default configuration or setting the environment variables. We will see that how to do this. So beyond customization, the command line execution becomes especially important when integrating our testing framework into CI/CD pipelines. So continuous integration environments predominantly operate without GUIs. What we mean by that, we don't see any UI in there. We don't see any test runner in there, right? We just do everything with the command line. So making the CLI an essential tool for orchestrating and automating test runs. In a sense, while the Cypress test runner GUI remains a go-to for local development, as I mentioned before, and interactive debugging, the CLI serves as the backbone for scalable, adaptable, and CI-friendly test execution. I'm saying it again. Uh, as I said, the clouds, the Jenkins, and etc., these cannot interact as we are interacting with the test runner by doing Cypress npx Cypress open. But the CLI commands are basically doing whatever we do with the Cypress test runner, using Cypress test runner from the command line, and they need these CLIs. So as I mentioned before, the npx Cypress run command is the primary way to execute Cypress tests from the command line. By default, This command will execute all tests files specified in the spec pattern in your Cypress configuration, which we just did and from here. So these tests run in headless mode and using the Electron browser. By the way, Electron is a specific test browser. So I will just do the very basic one and let's see how it looks like. So I will just do one headless. I will just say npx cypress run. I will not keep it so long. I'm just going to kill the tests after. I'm going to kill my test and stop execution. So now if we go above, you will see an information in here. So this is just a meta information how your tests run. So what it's telling us, it's running in the Cypress 13.1.0. The browser is using Electron 106 version browser in headless mode. It's using this node version. That's the node version that we use. It's coming from us. It's running these specs, these folders, and inside this spec file that we provide. So this is just giving information. So if you do not provide any option, if you just run this command by npx cypress run, by default it's always going to use the Electron browser in headless mode. But as you saw before, how we just made it again, we like disabled the headless mode. We can also change the browser type. We can also change the specs pattern, at which, like for example, folder structure, like folder, I mean tests that we want to run inside the folder, or maybe we only want to run a specific file. So if you wish to view the test execution in a real time, you can use the headed option, which we just learned before, right? So when this option is added, the test will still use the Electron browser, but they will run in visible window, allowing you to observe the test as they progress. So what I mean is just from these results. So how we overcome this issue? By using this npx cypress run headed. So whenever I do headed, since I didn't define anything about my browser type, so running this command is just going to run again in the Electron browser using in headed mode. So I'm just gonna also let it continue. I will kill the test again. So if I go above, now you will see Electron browser, but you will not going to see headless in here, because now it's in the headed mode. Let's say you also want to change your browser type. So for more flexibility, Cypress also allows you to specify which browser you would like to use for test run. This can be done by using -- browser flag followed by the desired browser type. So let's say you want to run your tests in headed mode using Chrome browser. All you need to do is just provide this option, -- browser Chrome. Of course with headed if you want to run in the headed mode. So I will just copy this command and paste on the command line, and you will see right now it's going to use the Chrome browser instead of Electron. As you can see right now, it's using the Chrome browser. Let's also kill our test. Let's go above, and now you will see Chrome in here, not Electron anymore. You can change it to Firefox, you can change it to Opera, I mean anything that you are using in your company. Cypress is giving you pretty much flexibility on this one. So let's say you want to run your specific file, right? You want to run this one specifically, for example, login.spec.cs. So in our case, we don't have that file type, and let's say I only want to run this advanced topic. So all I need to do is I'm just going to get this command, but of course I need to change this command to my file name. So I will just do 05 underscore. By the way, it's a case sensitive, so it should be as same as your file name. So when I provide this, it's going to only run this test in here. I think we just gave a wrong file name. 05 underscore advanced topic cy.js. I think I'm just missing something very basic. Okay, Cypress framework documents. Maybe we should not provide the double quotation. I'm not really sure. Oh, the reason that because we are just missing this integration, right? So I have to provide this end-to-end. Inside the end-to-end, it should be integration. Now it's working as expected. So now, since we know that how to run the specific file, let's also go back to this topic that I said I will go back to this overriding this environment variable. So this time normally we were running our tests in our production environment, which is Tech Global Training, right? This website. But I also told you that we have also staging environment too, which is this using this URL instead. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to override this option. So by this that I will provide in the environment variable. So I will just do I will use this one again because I only want to run this one. And at the end, I'm just going to add dash dash environment, and I'm going to overwrite this what I have. So I will just say login underscore URL, and after that, I'm just going to provide my URL. So with this command, I'm just overriding my environment variable. So let's also make it headed mode to see the browser, so we can see the URL. It's really actually running in the this URL. So I will start my test right now. Yes, it's using our Netlify app, as you can see. So we are also can override our environment variable to via CLI. So thank you very much for your time. Today we have seen the power of these options and as well as power of this CLI command. From now on, we are going to run our tests more often from the CLI, because in your company, as I say, while you are building your test scripts and automation scripts, you will be using this test runner. It's fine, but you should be really familiar and really good with the CLI to run all your commands. So thank you very much for your time. See you in the next lecture.